Please join me as we begin this annual taking refuge and setting intention ceremony in some meditative reflection. Allowing your eyes to close, your body to settle. Feel what's here now. Bring mindfulness into the present time experience, breath, body, thoughts, and emotions. Release any unnecessary tension. Soften your jaw, your eyes, your shoulders, the belly. Relax into the here and now, as much as you can. The Buddha taught that all of the Dharma, all of the liberating insights, the truth of reality, enlightenment, would be found right here in your own body. Mindfulness invites us to turn inward, to investigate. To directly experience what's happening moment to moment. Not seeking outside of ourselves, but this internal transformation that leads to less and less reactivity, more and more ease, more and more peace. The freedom and happiness of the Buddha, of being awake. Although we're gathered to mark the end of a calendar year and set our intentions for the coming year, for now, just keep coming back to the present. Each time the mind wanders off into the future, your plans, your hopes and dreams, gently return, friendly, kind, returning to the present. Right now, it's like this. These sensations and emotions and thoughts. Before turning towards forgiving ourselves and others for past deeds. Just turning towards radical self-acceptance in this moment. Right now, it's like this. This human condition, this fragile heart, impressionable mind, this aging body, sensations, arising and passing, thoughts coming and going. Now that we're all here, welcome to Against the Stream. This is an annual New Year's Eve intention setting ceremony with opportunity to take refuge, and I'll talk about what that means, and also commit to what's called Sīla, ethical guidelines for our life. These 5 suggestions that the Buddha gave, 5 precepts for a minimum of morality, of ethics, committing to a life of nonviolence, the intention to not cause harm. So we'll talk a bit about what it is to take refuge and what the precepts are and what it means. And of course, everybody's welcome to find your own way with them. I don't do this as a very religious ceremony, much more personal, much more you making it your own, however, what it means to you. This is I guess this is the 20th year in a row that I've done this ceremony. I think the first one I started was Y2K, 99. And that New Year's Eve, up until then, all of the New Year's Eve were out at some show or another doing some fun punk rock something. And that year, because we knew the world was going to end, we said, let's just meditate. And I got together with just some friends from my community, and we meditated together, and we talked about the taking refuge and the precepts, and we lit some candles and stated our intentions of if the world doesn't end, where are we going to go from here? And I've been doing it every year since. I did it for about a decade or many years in San Francisco when I was living up there. And then I did it for a few years in New York when I lived in New York. And I've been doing it for about 15 years here in Los Angeles. Many of you've been. How many people are doing it for the first time this year? Welcome to all of you. In the past years, when I used to have 2 centers, one in the west side, Santa Monica, and one in Hollywood, we would do Santa Monica from 7 to 9, and then we would go to Hollywood to the east side and do 10 to like 12:30, and a couple hundred people would come to each. So, I'm glad that not so many people are showing up so I can fit in this smaller space tonight. And sorry if you didn't get a proper chair. It looks like there is one empty proper chair here. If anybody on the floor, knees are hurting already, feel free to take it. Any other empty chairs? Just one for Elijah. 2. One in the back. Okay, so there's 3 empty chairs. If any of your asses are hurting bad enough yet on the floor, feel free to take them. I'd like to say we're going to go straight through. We're not going to take a break. You're welcome to hang out afterwards for a little bit, but we're going to go straight through. And what Buddhism teaches us and what meditation is much more than just the sitting still practice. It's about bringing awareness to everything that we do, including listening when other people are speaking, including, just being present with what's happening, even though your eyes aren't closed, bringing a meditative, a mindful, a present time awareness to whatever you're doing. So if at some point during this ceremony you need to use the bathroom, feel free. They're down the hall there to the left. You can get up and go to the bathroom. But I'd like to ask to keep the room basically silent unless you're coming to light the candle to not have side conversations, so that we're just all here together, holding the space, paying attention to what's happening as it's happening. And if you need to leave early, feel free to leave early. I won't be offended. It's, you're here on your own free will. But we'll finish around 9-ish. We'll see. Depends on how long-winded you are in your aspirations. People get up there and they get a candle and it's like the awards. I'd like to thank many of you are part of my community, of our community of Against the Stream, practicing Buddhism. Some of you are coming to check this out, and I think that in some ways the New Year's Eve thing over the years has become this almost introduction to what we do here at Against the Stream. A lot of people come through on New Year's. They just, somebody drags you here and says, hey, we're going to go light a candle. Let's go check out this Buddhist thing on New Year's. So I'll take a moment just to give a little overview of what Buddhism is and what it is to take refuge and what the precepts are about. Buddhism offers a non-theistic approach to spiritual awakening. The Buddha taught that, as I said in the meditation just now, that everything that you need to end suffering is right here within you. That there's not an external source of salvation, but that there is an internal ability, that humans have the ability to wake up. And this word Buddha, in a few minutes, we'll do this thing where we chant this weird, ancient Pali language, and we say, in Pali, I take refuge in Buddha. And my sense of what that means is that we're acknowledging that it's possible. And the Buddha taught, he said, I've done this. He said, I'm not magic. I'm not a mystical. I'm not a god. I'm just awake. I'm just a human being who has seen what causes suffering for us. I looked inward and I saw there's all of this craving. And the craving, which leads to clinging and attachment and leads to aversion and anger and resentment and self-centeredness. And this causes us suffering. And he said, I discovered this technique that we call mindfulness. And that when we turn in with mindfulness, we start to see what's causing suffering and how we can end suffering. And through ending suffering, we are awake. Buddha means awake. And to me, quite simple. To be awake means you're seeing clearly. Not through a diluted lens, not through one of the ways that he says, I teach for those with little dust in their eyes. These teachings, these practices clear away the dust so that you see clearly. Seeing clearly means that we understand that everything's impermanent. Because everything's impermanent, nothing is worth clinging to. Some of you were here last night. I did a whole long lecture on non-attachment, on letting go. The reality is everything is impermanent. And when we cling, we suffer. And when we let go, we stop suffering. And that's why we're all here, right? We want to not suffer. We want to be happy. We want to be free. Non-attachment. We understand the impermanent nature of things. We understand that so much of this human experience is not your fault, is impersonal. We take it all so personal, our minds, our cravings, our aversions, our self-centered tendencies. We think it's all our fault. The more you meditate, the more you see you don't have that much influence over what your mind does. And, you tell your mind to shut up, I'm going to meditate, and your mind says, go fuck yourself. I'm going to make plans, and I'm going to remember a bunch of shit, and I'm going to have some resentments, and no, you shut up. And then the more you meditate, the more you say, like, oh, okay, this is nothing to suffer about. This is just what the human mind does. It's not who I am, just biological evolution. This is our survival instinct, craving, aversion, fear, self-centeredness. These are not sins. These are not shortcomings. These are the natural human tendency. It's just what it's like to have a brain. The more we meditate, the more you normalize the human condition, and the more you stop taking it so personal and suffering about it. So this refuge of Buddha, the way that I feel about it, I just got back from Thailand and I was practicing with some real Buddhists who they have so much reverence for the historical Buddha. And I have some, but for me, I mean, I'm grateful that this path was laid out. I have some reverence and some gratitude. I appreciate that I was born into a situation where I suffered enough to get desperate enough to meditate. I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful that I had these teachings. You know, I don't know about you. I think many of us have been in this situation where it's so easy to do spiritual shopping in America. In this generation where you walk into the New Age bookstore and there's, 100 different books promising easy enlightenment. And there's, and then even if you get involved in Buddhism, you're like, well, is it Zen? Is it Tibetan Buddhism? Is it Theravadan? Where, should I go with the Hindus, the Sufis, Christians, where should I get my spirituality? I did quite a bit of exploration in my early years and just found that Buddhism explained my direct experience in a way that resonated more deeply than anything else. And I especially appreciate about Buddhism is that it's non-theistic, that it's not about belief in a external source, but that it actually puts total responsibility. Awakening is possible. You have to do all the work to get there. There's no grace. There's no blessing. There's no easy, fast way. It's possible. It's in here. It's in you. It's part of your birthright. But you have to meditate your way to those realizations yourself. And for me, that felt trustworthy. I'm very skeptical of quick fixes, of easy salvations, there's something about these teachings. And especially the way the Buddha laid it out, he started with, there's suffering. And I was like, yes, he's correct about that. I know that for sure. There is suffering. There's a cause of suffering. I was like, okay, well, I was never quite sure. Why am I suffering so much? Oh, it's this repetitive craving. Like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I'm a drug addict. I'm always craving. And then you get sober, you're like, oh, I'm still craving. Now it's not so much for the drugs and the alcohol, but it's for pleasant, craving for, can I just be comfortable? Can I just avoid pain? And then you start to wake up, it's impossible. You can't avoid pain. Taking refuge in Buddha is making a personal commitment, not to religion, the way I think about it, but to, I want to be awake. I want to see clearly. I want to see the impermanent, the impersonal, the unsatisfactory nature of reality. I want to see it clearly and respond appropriately, wisely. When you're responding appropriately through non-attachment, through compassion to pain, you're awake. That's what we do when we're awake. So we take refuge in, we commit to trying to do that more often. You can only do it in the present, one moment at a time. So it's not like 2020, I'm going to be awake. No, but I'm going to keep practicing mindfulness, which will give me the best potential to respond wisely, paying attention, tending to what's happening moment to moment. The second refuge is the Dharma and being awake and awake to reality as it is. The Dharma is reality. When I was with my teacher a couple weeks ago, he kept translating Dharma as nature. Just the way that it is. It's just the natural way that it is. Nature is impermanence. Nature is loss. Nature is grief. Nature is the four elements in all of these different forms. So we want to be awake to reality, to nature, the way that it is, this human nature, this material world nature. And everything is nature. Do you ever find yourself thinking like, man, I got to get it. I got to get out into nature. Right here in the city, it's all nature. The concrete is nature. The buildings are nature. The bad drivers are nature. You know, we make this split of the four elements of like, no, the woods, got to get down to the beach, closer to nature. No, Lincoln, the traffic on Lincoln is nature because it is made up of the four elements as everything is. And part of our practice of waking up, of seeing clearly, is starting to not do that separation, that division between what is sacred and what is not sacred, where I can be at peace and where I have to be frustrated and thinking like, well, the city frustrates me. I got to get out to the woods, or I got to get down to the beach, or making, he was giving this teaching in Bangkok. I don't know how many of you have been to Bangkok, one of the biggest, craziest, most chaotic cities. He's like, this is nature. And we can walk down the sidewalk like we're walking down a forest path. The third refuge is Sangha, community. We translate it as community. Sangha traditionally means having people to practice with, that share your similar values, views, intentions. The reason that Against the Stream exists is that I want there to be a home for our community. There's something about having a home where you gather, you practice together, you connect, you meet. My own sense of Sangha, of community, is that we need three layers. There's a lot of teachings in traditional Buddhism that say avoid people who are foolish and don't practice. And spend as much time as you can. Spend all of your time with the wise. Find wise people and hang out with them. And diss all of your foolish homies. My own sense, I have not done that. Obviously. My own sense is three layers to Sangha. Yes, Sangha is the people that I meditate with, that I practice with. But for me, Sangha means I want to have teachers. I want to have people that I look up to, that have been practicing, that have developed what I'm trying to develop. Mentors, people that inspire me. Very important, people we look up to. And then peers, so important to have peers, people that like we're on this path together. We're learning, we're practicing together. And we're, been at it for a while. And then also Sangha, the people who are just either coming in or the people that aren't even practicing yet. But rather than avoiding everyone who doesn't have wisdom, being an example for people of like, it's possible to be a meditator and still go to the Punx show. You don't have to avoid that. Oh no, the meditators don't go there. And still go to, wherever you're going to still engage, to be of service, to be example. Over and over throughout my life, people have come to me and said, hey, I heard you're the meditation guy. I want to learn to meditate. And if I had just avoided people that didn't meditate, like how could I have been of service? How could we have built these communities that we've built? So my sense is have some foolish friends and try to inspire them. Be an example. I'm not encouraging, proselytizing. Don't be that kind of Buddhist where you go out and tell everybody, I've got the good news. Have you heard of mindfulness? It'll change your fucking life. I'm not encouraging that, but just to model it, and to keep the doors open, to be of service. People to practice with. A lot of us are in recovery from addiction. We call it fellowship, the importance of that peer support. So important. Sangha. And then, people that inspire us, that have done the work. So that's how I think of this first part of the ritual that we'll do, taking refuge in your own potential for awakening, taking refuge, committing to knowing the truth, the Dharma, directly, coming to more harmony with nature. I want to see clearly. I want to respond wisely. I want to live in harmony with nature. And I know that that's a relational practice, that I need people, that in the Sangha, there's both support and inspiration, and then there's plenty of opportunity to learn how to have conflict and to learn how to forgive. One of my favorite images, many of you have heard it a lot from me, is that I had a teacher years ago who said, the community, which is so much of our practice, it's like a rock tumbler. You come to a spiritual center, you go to a retreat, you think, oh man, these are going to be like the greatest, most spiritual, kind, loving people. And then you start to get to know them and you're like, these guys are all jerks. He said the Sangha, he was actually saying this about, I was starting to work at this meditation center with all of my teachers. And he said, when you actually get in here behind the curtain and you see how neurotic these teachers actually are, he's like, you got to understand that the Sangha is actually a rock tumbler. And that we all come in with our jagged edges. And that how we smooth out our jagged edges is by rubbing up against each other, bouncing the conflicts, the disagreements, the judgments, the fears, the insecurities, all of those human relational things that happen help smooth us out, take the edges off. And so then looking at conflict or betrayal or whatever it is as an opportunity for healing, as an opportunity for awakening, rather than as like, well, I'm not going to go there because they're not all perfect yet. Of knowing that we're in our all stages of imperfection and that, of course, we're going to disappoint each other sometimes. So, welcome to the Rock Tumbler Sangha, against the stream. And that's my feeling about the first part of the taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And then the second part, which is, and you can unroll, if you have your scroll, you can unroll it. Keep the string, just untie the string and just maybe lay it over your leg because we're going to do something with the string. There are some in the office, yeah. Soma's grabbing some more strings. Did anybody else lose their string? Okay, we're grabbing some. We're grabbing some. On the desk. So the second part of this is these teachings on the ethical precepts. Buddhism is based on the understanding that there is cause and effect, that what we call karma, that every intentional action, volitional action has a result, has an outcome. And that when we act in ways that are unskillful, are dishonest, are harmful, when we intentionally kill, when we intentionally lie, steal, cheat, that we own that action. And now sometimes cause and effect is as simple as you feel guilty. You feel afraid of getting caught when you've been being dishonest. Sometimes karma is that simple. And so there's this huge encouragement to live a life of honesty, to live a life of nonviolence. If you want to wake up, if really you're committed and you say, hey, this Buddhist stuff makes a lot of sense, I want to be awake, then you make a commitment to doing your best to not cause harm. And here's the 5 guidelines. The precept to abstain from intentionally killing any living being. For some people, they interpret this as like, cool, I'm going to be vegetarian or vegan. I don't want to participate in the death of any animal or any living being. And, you know, that's a noble interpretation. If you decide to be a vegetarian, vegan, great. That's not what this precept is asking of us. The precept is saying, don't murder. And all living beings, not just humans, of course, of course don't kill humans. But it's taking it to the level of don't intentionally take life of any being. And when you take this precept and you start to think about it, and then the mosquito lands on you, rather than in a reactive aversion to, like, I'm going to kill this fucker before it gives me a small, annoying bump that I'm going to scratch for 3 days. Pausing and saying, like, okay, out of compassion for this life form, all living beings have a core survival instinct that says, I don't want to die. I don't want to be harmed. Maybe it's not as conscious as our human aversion to being killed, but all beings have that survival instinct. So it gives us a pause and saying, like, okay, can I practice nonviolence in this situation? Can I shoo the mosquito away? Can I pick the spider up and take it outside rather than smashing it? On the second day of this retreat I was on last week, a couple weeks ago, and I was sharing a room on this retreat with one of my oldest and closest friends. And we were in silence, so we weren't talking to each other. But on day 2, he came and he was like, and there was this huge tarantula in our room. There's this massive spider in our room. And, so then we got to do this, like, getting the basket and putting it, catching it, and it was running all over, and catching it and taking it out, and then living in fear for the next week that it was going to come back in. So this precept to abstain from killing. So you have to decide, is that something that you're committed to? Are you committed to not killing? And if you want to commit to it, great, commit to it. Do this with us tonight. And if you're somebody who hunts or fishes or, believes in killing, and you're a ninja assassin, I don't know what you're up to, but then don't take the precept. If you don't have the intention to follow through with it, don't take it. We'll all be imperfect. We're not asking for perfection. Just, is it your intention to try not to kill? If so, take the precept. The second precept is about abstaining from stealing. Again, if you're committed to honesty and to not taking that which you have not earned or has not been offered, then, if you're somebody who has a shoplifting habit and doesn't plan on stopping, and then don't take. I have a sense that it's not good to say things that we don't mean. You don't want to. It's the fourth precept is about abstaining from lying. So you don't want to sit here and break the fourth precept while taking the second precept, because you're lying about even saying it. So stealing and lying, a commitment to honesty. The third precept is about abstaining from sexual misconduct. Buddhism is very liberal about sexuality, and the core of it is consenting adults. As long as it's consensual adult sexuality, it is completely cool. It's not about monogamy. It's not about marriage. It's not a super homophobic or anything like that. It's just like consenting adults. But it means that if you have made a commitment to not break that commitment or not participate in someone else breaking their commitment. It's part of the honesty, sexual misconduct. The fifth precept is the most controversial. The first four make sense, right? Of course, you don't want to kill and lie and steal and behave in unskillful ways with your sexuality. The fifth precept is where people often have difficulty, because the fifth precept is asking for abstinence from all forms of recreational drug and alcohol use. Buddhism is a sober spiritual tradition. It is a abstinent, drug-free, alcohol-free tradition. And of course it makes sense, right? Because mindfulness is the tool that's going to lead to your liberation. If you drink alcohol or use drugs, you can no longer be mindful. And I just went on and on about being awake. The reason we like booze and drugs is because they put us to sleep a little bit. And it feels so good to go to sleep a little bit, to not be so awake to the pains, to the reality of life. So the Buddha was quite clear, if you want to follow this path to its fullest, the best way to do it is to abstain from drug and alcohol use. Half of our community, maybe more than half, 3/4 of us, are recovering addicts. So for us, it's great. It supports our necessary abstinence. We need to be sober because we're junkies, right? We got to stay sober. It's more of a dilemma for the Buddhists who come in that aren't addicts. And they're like, well, you know, a couple bong hits here and there, some fine wine, 12-pack on Sunday, whatever it is. It's more of a dilemma. And you all have to find your own way with it. The precept is abstinence. There are many Buddhists who have bastardized this precept and misinterpreted it and reinterpreted it to make themselves, to justify their own drug and alcohol use. The precept is clearly abstinence. It's obviously what the Buddha taught. You don't have to practice it, but for me, it's a pet peeve of mine around Buddhists who say, oh, no, moderation's cool. He said middle path over there, remember? So let's assign middle path to drugs and alcohol. I'm going to go on a soapbox here for a minute. So what if we assigned moderation to killing? It's okay to kill in moderation. It's okay to steal in moderation. Sexual misconduct in moderation, bro. Lying only sometimes. All of these precepts are about doing our best to abstain. Making a commitment to saying, I'm going to do my best to not kill, to not lie, to not steal, to not act out sexually, and to not use drugs and alcohol. I'm going to commit to not doing that. So again, if you're somebody who drinks, don't take this precept. Is my feeling. Don't take it. If you're somebody that kills, don't take that precept. If you're somebody that steals, only take the precepts that you feel committed to.
Are you still Buddhist then?
Sure. And these are not, the question was, are you still a Buddhist if you don't take all the precepts? 100%. There's maybe like 5 precept Buddhists. There's also people who take 8 precepts, who part of their commitment is to not wear any adornments, to not eat any food after midday, and to not sleep in comfortable beds. It's part of a kind of a renunciation practice. So you can be a 8 precept Buddhist, you can be a 5 precept Buddhist, you can be you can make up your own. I'm going to be a 3 precept Buddhist because...
What's the cutoff? When are you
I don't know. I mean, even what it means to be a Buddhist, I'm not even sure that I'm a Buddhist. What's that mean? I love the teachings. I apply them to my life. I'm not interested in the religiosity of being part of a religion. Most of Buddhism is not very Buddhist. really. Like it's become this, it's so far away from what the Buddha actually taught. A follower of the Buddha, a practitioner of Buddhism. Your level of renunciation is up to you. Here's what's encouraged, and then you just find your way with it. And again, there's, other than the monks, almost none of my Western insight teachers practice the fifth precept. They're all the hippies that came in on LSD and weed, and they continue to smoke weed and drink and use hallucinogens and reinterpret the, part of who I'm dissing of like, but also Zen Buddhism, alcohol is part of it, Tibetan Buddhism. I had rented the space to a Tibetan Buddhist group one day, and I came in and there was 2 40-ouncers of like Colt 45 on the altar. And I was like, what's going on? Like these Buddhists are drinking in my meditation center. And then I realized it's part of Tibetan Buddhism to drink alcohol sometimes after an empowerment. They call it a soak, and it's part of their tradition. They get soaked. Super soaked. And it's part of their tradition. So there's forms of Buddhism that have ignored this part of the Buddhist teaching and have said, alcohol is cool. I'm from this old school Theravadan original interpretation that supports my recovery, supports my abstinence, and that of course the Buddha wasn't going to be like, it's cool to drink. He was saying like, you want to wake up? Let's keep a clear mind all the time. Let's keep a clear mind. So, other questions about the precepts or the refuges? Good enough? So let's do it together in the tradition of, I'm a bit averse to chanting in foreign languages myself. One of the things that the Buddha taught early on was he says, when you teach the Dharma, translate it into the language of the people that you're teaching it to. If you're going to teach to people who speak English, teach the Dharma in English. Don't try to keep it in Pali or Sanskrit or Thai or Tibetan or, translate it so that we understand what we're saying. There's something about this chant, partially because I've been doing it this way for 30 years. And because millions and millions of people have been saying everywhere you go. So if you go to Thailand, this isn't Thai, this is Pali. It's an ancient Indian language. But in Thailand, you're saying it in Pali. In Sri Lanka, you're saying it in Pali. In China, you're saying it in Pali. So this is where every Buddhist tradition, all of the millions, the billions of people that have taken refuge have used these words. And these words mean, I go to the Buddha as my refuge. I commit to awakening. I go to the Dharma as my refuge. I commit to understanding reality as it is. I go to the Sangha, my relationships, the community as my refuge. I commit to these practices. So we'll do it in this traditional language. And you don't need to say the things that are in the brackets. So taking a moment to gather your connection, your intention to your practice, to these teachings. And then you can read along, chant along if you'd like. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddham Saranam Gacchami. Dhammam Saranam Gacchami. Sangham Saranam Gacchami. Dutiyampi Buddham Saranam Gacchami. Dutiyampi Dhammam Saranam Gacchami. Dutiyampi Sangham Saranam Gacchami. Tatiyampi Buddham Saranam Gacchami. Tatiyampi Dhammam Saranam Gacchami. Tatiyampi Sangham Saranam Gacchami. And flipping it over, going to the Five Precepts. And again, together, I take the precept to abstain from killing. I take the precept to abstain from stealing. I take the precept to abstain from sexual misconduct. I take the precept to abstain from lying. I take the precept to abstain from using recreational substances that cause intoxication and lead to heedlessness. So you can set your paper aside and you can take your string in two hands. And you can tie a knot in the center. So you just take it and you tie a knot just in the center of it. And that's tying in your commitment to awakening. And then you tie a second knot for your commitment to living in harmony with reality, with nature, with the truth, the Dharma. And you take a third knot and you tie in your commitment to Sangha, community, being of service, participating, learning, practicing with others. So you tie these three knots, these three refuges into the string. And then you have a fully empowered blessing cord to remind you of your commitment. And it's very intentional that this is a flimsy piece of string that you can tie around your wrists, you can wear, and that it will be impermanent. That it'll remind you. For somebody tonight said his lasted until October from last New Year's. And so, maybe you'll get 6 or 9 or 8 months, or maybe you'll get a whole year out of this piece of string, and then it will fall off. And it will remind you about impermanence and about reestablishing your commitment over and over to these practices. So you can, if you want to tie it on, or if you want some help, turn to your neighbor, help them tie their strings on. I tricked you. You're all Buddhists now. Welcome to the cults. We'll have Kool-Aid later. But please join me in another period of meditative reflection. Part 2. Reflect on your life. this incarnation, the joys and sorrows, successes and failures, the losses, the gains, the experiences of love, the experiences of heartbreak, the hell realms we visited, the heaven realms we've sought, meet your life as much as you can in this moment with forgiveness, with compassion for all of the pain you've lived through, with mercy, the 10,000 sorrows of incarnation. Living with this human mind that judges, that compares, that fears, that craves. This human body, subject to sickness, aging, death, illness, injury. Send yourself loving kindness as a child, forgiveness as an adolescent, as a teenager, as a young adult. All of the mistakes, all of the dead ends we've been down. Meet your life with tenderness as much as you can in this moment. And of course, also appreciation for the successes, for the joys, the good work, the progress you've made, the healing you've experienced, the recovery. The Buddha said that by the time we take a human birth that comes into contact with the Dharma, we've lived so many lives, we've suffered so much, we've bled as much blood as in all of the rivers of the world. We've grieved so much, we've cried as many tears as in all of the oceans on the planet. We've suffered enough. When we come into contact with the Dharma and we begin the work to end suffering, to end the bloodshed, to awaken to the deathless. May each one of us heal what needs to be healed, forgive what needs to be forgiven. letting go of the past as we tend to it skillfully, letting go of this last year as we turn towards our aspirations, our intentions, our plans for the coming year, for our life. What direction are you headed? The Buddha said there are two dead ends to be avoided. There's the dead end of seeking happiness in the material world, the delusion that enough sense pleasures, enough material possessions will lead to your happiness. And this is a dead end to be avoided. The other dead end to be avoided is the dead end of religion, blind faith, thinking that there's some easy salvation. He says, I teach a middle path, a path of balance between these two dead ends. Humanist psychology, doing the work, tending to our own heart, our own mind, living an ethical life, developing wisdom and compassion. What are your aspirations? What are you going to do with your intention for this coming year? In a moment, we'll open to the ceremony of committing, lighting the candles, voicing our aspirations, our intentions. What is it for you? Where are you going? What are you working on? Letting go of? Developing? So we're a little packed in here, and we need to, people need to be able to get up to the table. So I think that you guys, I mean, you're kind of okay, but you're going to be sort of in the line. We need to move back. I think you guys are okay there, although it might get a little crowded on the aisle. It is what it is. There's a couple seats in the back, so maybe a couple people in the middle there. If you guys could go to their seats in the back. Clear that space up. You might hit the hallway back there. So the way this works is, if you were watching at home, thank you for joining us. Now we're going to set intentions. If you're at home, light a candle, make a commitment to enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. See you next time. you.